Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the policy meeting on October 25th with Director Alt and Director Sued in presence, as well as myself, Director Connor. First, we will be having our new regulations for our gender guidelines. Regulation 413, presented by Mr. Chris Belmont.
Thank you, Director Connor. Happy to be here. So these guidelines for supporting transgender and gender expansive students are procedures for our school district to follow. They really are intended to help ensure that all students feel welcomed and valued, to help schools ensure safe learning environments free of discrimination, harassment, and bullying, and to promote the educational and social integration of transgender and gender expansive students. These guidelines are supported by District Policy 102, Equal Education Opportunity, 413, Harassment and Violence, 515, our Bullying Prohibition Policy, 515, Protection and Privacy of Pupil Records, 522, Title IX, Sex Non-Discrimination Policy, Grievance Procedures and Processes, and 525, Violence Prevention. The language you see here was adopted from guidance from our Minnesota School Boards Association, a lot of consultational work being done with their attorneys, as well as we put it through our own district's attorney to make sure that we are maximizing our resources and opportunities to set forth our policies and our procedures and our guidelines for upholding the policies I mentioned. We also have, we conveyed student groups, including our Gay Straight Alliance at Burnsville High School, to help provide input, as well as Dana Thompson, who has helped be a bridge between our policy implementation at district office and our sites. No, that's all I've got.
That's okay. Are there any questions or discussions regarding this regulation for Mr. Belmont?
I don't have any.
I just picked up on this as you were reading it, Dr. Belmont. The reference to the policies in the second paragraph of the regulation, I think we need to double check the duplication of 515 bullying prohibition and 515 protection and privacy. They're probably two different policies.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I just heard it. I didn't.
And as
read
I
it.
was reading it, so thank you.
Yep,
We'll double
no
check
problem.
on that.
And I guess two questions. I'm assuming that we don't need to mention student and data privacy in the first paragraph because it's referenced in the second paragraph. Is that a fair statement?
That's my understanding.
Okay. And then just in terms of application, I'm curious how these guidelines might impact how class rosters appear, particularly at middle school and high school for staff.
Yeah, so that's a good question, and that's something I will bring forward to make sure that it's being considered. I think the wheels are in motion on that already. So some of the protective factors we're really trying to put in place and in motion immediately or already includes staff training. So that's occurring in November, including a 90-minute professional development experience for all staff that has to do with understanding the guidelines that you're seeing in front of you, and also hearing from our student panel and student perspective, as well as connecting these guidelines explicitly and collaboratively to our tools of cultural proficiency. Another protective guideline is that the student name process. So we do have a process in place for that that's been adopted and is put into practice during this time. The third one is our look at bathrooms and facilities, making sure that happens. And then one final protective factor we really want to have in place in all our schools is that affinity space and those opportunities for our students.
So just so I'm clear, basically what you're saying is at some point in the next period of time, for example, if there's a substitute in a classroom, the student's, preferred name
Preferred
would be up here on the class roster.
Yes, hold on. That is what I'll double check, is that through that student name process, that's insured.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So Director Alt, thank you for the question. One of the other components of the professional development will be to walk through real-life scenarios. So if parents or staff members have particular situations that we need to address, please let us know, as well as board members. So you will see at the beginning paragraph, it says that it doesn't cover everything because each situation is unique. So if there are particular things about the roster, or as you mentioned, substitute teachers, yes, please let us know.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And I just had a comment. I'm very glad to know that you had a student panel that gave you some input, because I'm just as concerned about the other students' comfort as I am about the student that's transgender. Because you mentioned about the bathrooms and the locker rooms and things like that. And I know some other students might feel uncomfortable all changing in the same locker room. I mean, I've experienced that before in the school system, so I'm just wondering, how did they handle that? I mean, do they all feel fine with it, since you had student input?
So what their experiences have been, or as far as the proposed changes, what their.
I guess the change that, I mean, yeah, because they're all gonna be, I mean, I know you said you're gonna try to set aside a privacy
Yeah.
locker room too, but, or,
Are you asking what the input of the group was?
no, I guess I'm asking, yeah, and how they felt about it.
Okay.
That's what I'm wondering, because I'm sure they mentioned something.
Yeah, and in my experiences with that particular affinity group is just what you mentioned, that they have different experiences, different hopes. As a general umbrella, they're really hoping that they can have the opportunity to share what they need, and that staff in all realms of their school experience are going to listen to them and respond. The facilities piece, number 6, I guess I have not received a ton of I have not yet received total feedback from that group. In my conversations with students. It varies. Some students would prefer to have the gender neutral bathroom option. Other students would like to have the opportunity to privately use the stall bathroom that's assigned to their preferred gender.
Right,
And
okay.
others continue to use the bathroom that's assigned to their previous gender. So I have had experiences from
Okay.
students in all different, having different places of
Right.
Preference, okay.
expectations.
Yeah.
So that's under 6A3, to determine which restrooms are most comfortable for the student.
Yeah, I read it somewhere where it said that the gender choice was the one that they could use, or they would not be refrained from using that, so
Yeah, I think
if it's
that's-
their choice, then it still may be uncomfortable for other students. So I was just wondering if you had heard some input on that from your student panel, but if you haven't, that's okay. But you kind of told me you,
I have not, it wasn't in a panel format, it was
Okay.
more individual conversations with
Okay.
students.
Oh,
but
okay.
yes.
Well, and if you think about it in terms of, the real-life situation, we've all been in a restroom and a locker room with someone who's trans, whether we've known it or not.
Right. Or you bring a good point, where right now, we are really supporting our students, because when they go out of our school districts, right, or our school facilities, there's restaurants, there's other avenues that they're going to go into that has the exact setup. So I think it's important for us to be able to reflect what our community and society is working on. So great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that is our, like Dr. Battle mentioned, our goal is to really provide those protective factors so that students aren't experiencing discrimination, and that we're really finding out what occurred, what the student is hoping for, and to match those things to their
well, absolutely, I definitely understand that the whole regulation. It's just, I was just wondering
Oh,
about the
yeah.
other side of it.
No, I'm really glad you're having these conversations, because I can tell you the The webinar with the attorney for the School Board Association was a complicated, long conversation. A lot of different scenarios, so a lot of communities are wrestling with how best to do this.
Yes,
We are too, yeah.
yeah. So, I know some community members that would be, and they're concerned about their students, so I'm just, playing devil's advocate a little bit. I'm just questioning, I'm not, definitely understand and have wholeheartedly, I'm glad we have this regulation to protect our transgender population, but we have to think about the whole student population too. So that's
yeah,
why I was
that's
just
true.
wondering
Thank you.
about their side of it.
Yeah, thank you.
And I have not experienced that, so, okay. Any other questions or comments on this?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Okay, so,
You got student discipline too.
Discipline, yeah, so I think student discipline 506 may be, I'm sorry.
yeah, okay, yep. So moving on to policy changes. For the first one will be 506, student discipline.
So the 506 student discipline policy is very few changes, some extending the language to make sure everything matches with this MSBA 2022 policy, spelling out Minnesota statutes and sections and subdivisions. So very small, minute details for this one to align with. As well as adding a few pieces in the legal references. So, just to, so you don't have to formally adopt it.
I didn't have much to say since this was from MSBA, so I didn't have any comment to make on it.
Right. Same here, because all I saw was statutes and cross-references that were added in there. So nothing else seemed to be changed.
I did. So let's see, Roman numeral 2, general statement of policy, second paragraph. I took good notes where I found these things this time. Proper positive discipline can only result from an environment which provides options and stresses student self-direction. I was thinking in terms of our strategic roadmap, and maybe we want to change that to student agency. So it's, I don't know if that changes the intent and the spirit of the statement. If we change self-direction to agency, and then self-direction, decision-making, et cetera.
Didn't we have a policy recently that the word agency was, do you remember that?
Yeah, agency is
Was
being
for-
able to act on what you want your self-direction to be. That's the difference.
Yeah.
So self-direction is
Agency
appropriate.
actually the action you take.
Gotcha.
Once you declare your self-direction.
So I will
I
withdraw.
can't remember the, definition,
But there was a
yes.
reason why we couldn't use certain word,
Yes.
because agency was the definition of something.
Else.
Yeah.
All right. And then page 506, 9, removal of students from class. I'm wondering if you could elaborate on how this part of the policy is communicated to staff and what regulations exist to, or just, I'm assuming there are regulations that exist to ensure consistency within each school and across all levels.
So each site does have, administrative designees that are implementing their practices through our PBIS structures. And so that is really, at all of our sites, our teacher teams are providing input through their PBIS processes. And then our administrators are deciding those dispositions.
And obviously, across the whole system, then, the administrators using the principals as the example, or the department heads are making sure that they're consistent among themselves.
Yes, so for example, at our next PD, our associate principals at Burnsville High School are leading our deans through a process where they're analyzing the teacher referrals up until this part of the year, and then what those responses have been, and then how that data is being entered in the system to be consistent over time, right? So,
Awesome. Great.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. And moving right along then to 4:15. Oh, thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much. And I know I'm still learning the process, so is that, do we adopt it? Oh, at the very end, okay. Thank you for helping me.
No problem.
It's a different process.
Okay,
Good
so-
evening.
Oh, yeah.
How are you, sweetie?
Moving on to policy 415, mandated reporting of maltreatment of vulnerable adults. And we will have Amy Piotrowski presenting.
Great. So the 415 mandated reporting for maltreatment of vulnerable adults, the major changes that were made in this policy, it looks really red, but it really all they did was kind of reorganize it. And so if you take a look at that, under definitions, they moved the what abuse means, they moved the definitions up above or behind some of those pieces. They took the abuse D, which used to be D, and they kind of reorganized that and pulled out some bullet points for that to kind of make it more user-friendly. And so just kind of a reorganization of those pieces. The other thing that they did is if you look in what they're looking at, so if you see F for mandated reporters, the real only change that they made through the policy that I can tell was a professional and professionals delegate while engaged in education is the new definition for that piece. And what they did is they removed any school personnel who has reason to believe that a vulnerable adult is being or has been maltreated. So that is the big cross off that was changed in the definition that was changed for mandated reporters. So other than that, the reorganization pieces for that, and then, the statutes, some of those were updated, and then also the legal references at the bottom were. So that's really the only major changes of this 415 policy review.
And Amy, you said,
Yes.
I understand things were probably reorganized, but none of the definitions itself has changed from previous definitions,
The
correct?
only one was the one that I talked
Okay,
about. Was
gotcha.
that was the only change that where they crossed off what they
All
had
right.
previously, and then they entered in a professional or professionals
Okay, now I
delegate.
see.
Well, yeah, it's
Gotcha.
F now. It used to be A, but now they've moved that all under the word abuse.
All right,
So
thank
yep.
you.
Any other questions or comments for Amy?
Yep, just a couple typos. 415-2, page 415, number 2, and number 3 at the top of the page. If we could add a space between the statute and the word between on that first line.
Oh, I see it. 3.31 B E T W.
Exactly,
I got it.
Yep.
Okay.
And then the other one,
Your page is different. Wait
Oh,
a
my
minute.
pages are different.
Yeah, right here.
Okay, gotcha. Found it.
415-4. K, third to the last line, there's individual's own, is all one word.
Yeah, I see it. You see it? Right there.
Oh, gotcha.
Other than that, that's all I have.
Okay. All right. Okay, moving on to, that's it? Okay. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to 410, family and medical leave policy. And we have Stacy Sovine. It's,
Good.
yes, Executive Director of Administration Services presenting.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am bringing to you 5 consent agenda-worthy policies that I'll be discussing here shortly, starting with 410, with the Family and Medical Leave Act. Really, there are no substantial changes to the meaning or application of this policy. The changes primarily are clarification in nature. So you'll see a lot of wordsmithing, but at the end of the day, they're all saying pretty much exactly the same thing. I can go and call out the different sections, but again, it's just pretty much movement around other words and clarification pieces.
Okay. Anyone on the privacy, policy committee have any questions or comments?
Yep.
I don't have any notes on this one here.
You either have any? No. Okay, all right. Okay, then Stacy, we will move on to 413, harassment and violence.
Yep. Again, 413 is very minor. We're going through and changing the title from the Executive Director of Human Resources to the Executive Director of Administrative Services as the Human Rights Officer. And if I recall, that was pretty much the only change in this policy.
Just a
Yeah.
cross-reference at the
Gender
end.
exclusion as far as the cross-reference for 413. Yep.
Questions or comments?
I'm good.
All right, we will move on to 522.
Again,
Now-
five,
You can go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna read it. No, go ahead. You can read, it's just reading the title. You can go ahead.
522, Title IX, Sex Non-Discrimination Policy, Grievance Procedure and Process. Again, we're looking at the changing of the HR title over to the Executive Director of Administrative Services. Really no substantial changes, just clarification through the process, updating dates and amendments, like statute language as such.
Questions or comments on policy 522? Or title. Okay. Policy 805, waste reduction and recycling.
This is the I don't like policy, or state statute policy. Really, that's what they've gone through is formatting before, and this policy may not have been reviewed for some time, it appears, because instead of putting all of the state statute at the end of the policy, at this point in time, every time they reference something, they put the policy, or the statute right there. So MSBA is just cleaning that up and just taking that out, updating. All of the statutes, for the most part, are in the same place, Minnesota Statute 115A, and then the different subsections. So really, it is formatting changes and just clarification changes. Nothing substantial through the majority of this.
Okay, any questions on waste reductions recycling policy 805? Yep. 806, emergency operations policy.
And again, 806, clarification changes, nothing substantial. Really, we're not looking, MSBA is getting into the practice of spelling things out more. So instead of abbreviating anything, that's what clarification is looking like. They're actually saying the Minnesota statute section versus just min stat. Other than that, not really much of anything else. Again, just updating the titles like on 8069, fire drill in school plus doors and exits, but it's just what it's referring to. Again, back to the clarification component.
Any questions on policy 8, or comments on policy 806?
No.
Okay. And thank you, Mr. Sovine.
Yep.
Okay, and then last, we have Aaron presenting policy 634, electronic tech acceptance use.
Thank you, Chair Connor and members of the committee. Hi. This is just the annual review as required by policy of 634. We're not recommending any significant changes at this time. I think Director Alt, you were on the committee last year, and this was a long process to get to this, a major change. So we'd like to just pretty much keep it the same, no language changes. There are a couple of edits, just missed typos or whatever that are in here that I'll be putting in the next version when it goes to the board so that it can be updated. And I can point those out to you if you'd like now.
They're not on here already?
Sure.
They're in here, yeah, no.
you can point
they're
it
not-
out.
They haven't been adjusted on your copies,
Oh, I
is my
see.
understanding.
No, this one's still, well,
Okay, so the ones I have are right on the first page, 634-1, under definitions D, the term harmful to minors means any that, materials that. So there's just an extra that there.
Okay.
We'll get rid of that. On 634-10, under letter E, department and non-instructional online content, under letter F, number 3, the building principal and his/her designee, that will be their designee rather than his/her, to be gender neutral. Also on that page, there's an extra space. I'll get that. Those are the edits that I have.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this policy of electronic tech acceptance? Acceptable use?
I think there must have been some formatting funkiness when this was first printed, because I did notice, I can give you examples if you want them, but extra spaces where they don't belong between words, spaces between,
An extra paragraph.
the paragraph breaks.
Yeah, I saw a couple in there that I thought might be an issue, but it would depend on going into the documents.
Yeah, if we can just look at those and,
I'll be happy to do that, go
yeah,
through it.
that'd be awesome.
yeah, see,
I
mine
saw that in one of the other ones too, but I didn't know that.
yeah, I don't have it here.
Nope, we're an educational institution, so.
Absolutely. Okay.
We're
Nope.
good?
No other comments or questions? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so now for the determination of consent or action items. Okay, so now for the regulation, I would think that's just a first reading. We don't have to do anything, right?
It's implementation, or do
Okay.
you
Good.
add it to the piece?
Hmm?
Do you add the regulations to all those policies? The
It's just linked to
guidelines?
the 413.
It's just linked to the
Yeah.
413?
I was gonna say, isn't
Okay,
it just
yep.
part of 413 policy? Okay, it's just a regulation of 413, okay, good.
I
So
just
that's our-
wanted to clarify, because there were several policies before you, yeah. So go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's what I
Director
was
Connor,
thinking, so I'm
'cause-
glad you clarified that, because that's,
Yeah. She was asking.
okay, and so that's just our first reading, but it's consent, isn't it?
First reading would not be consent.
Okay, then
First
first
reading
reading,
is actual action and discussion.
oh, which is what we did.
New business?
Okay, so new business. Well, all these would be new business, okay. No? Okay, then.
New business or consent?
Okay, so 506, for student discipline. Now, I put, of course, I called it first reading. I don't know I thought that was the right terminology. And then, since there were only statutes and cross-references, I said that should be no consent. Okay. So, do you got that, Jamie? Okay.
Jeremy,
So for
Jamie got it.
Okay, so for 415, the mandated reporting of maltreatment of vulnerable adults, that's first reading. And do I need to say anything else about that?
No.
Okay, and 410, family medical leave policy. Of course, again, that's to my terminology, first reading.
So we're only minimal change.
Right.
So it'll be consent.
So, okay, good. Consent? Okay. And the same thing with, for 413 then, moving on to that one. It's first reading and consent because there was hardly any changes. Okay, so 522. We just changed some words and we just changed the regulations and cross-referencing and updated the legal references. So I believe that would be consent. And for
Waste
805,
reduction.
805, we just, for waste reduction and recycling, we just had some formatting issues, and then we updated the legal references, so I believe that should be consent. Okay, 806, that's first reading, and I believe that should be consent too. And then for the, yes, for the policy on electronic tech and acceptable use, that also had no changes, so consent. Any comments on that? Okay. Well, then, if we have no further comments, then the policy meeting of October 25th, 2022 is adjourned.
Unbelievable.